Picture this, somewhere deep in the Amazon rainforest, hidden beneath layers of dense jungle and centuries of silence, lies the faint outline of a city, roads, mounds, and geometric patterns that span miles. Not built by modern hands, and not even by the civilizations we already know. Far beneath the ice of Antarctica, researchers have found what appear to be perfectly geometric structures, walls, towers, and even domes, entombed under solid ice. In the depths of ancient deserts, massive boulders split so precisely it's as if they were sliced with lasers. In other corners of the world, sonar scans show monumental structures at the bottom of lakes, giant hands etched into the earth that can only be seen from the sky. And then, of course, there are the skeletons, unusually tall, strangely shaped, dug up in places where no one expected them to be. These aren't urban myths or conspiracy theories. These are real-world discoveries, documented by scientists, photographed, measured, and yet no one has a clear answer for how they got there or why they exist. No written records, no context, just silence. And that's the part that should make us pause. Because if even one of these things, just one, turns out to be something other than what experts believe, if one site is older than it should be, if one structure couldn't have been made with tools available at the time, or if one artifact simply doesn't fit the story we've been told, then everything starts to unravel. Our tidy timeline of human history, it cracks. Our understanding of ancient civilizations, it collapses. We're forced to admit that either we missed something massive or that something out there once walked this earth that we have no record of. So, in this video, we're diving into 8 of the most baffling archaeological discoveries ever found. They're recent, they're real, and they don't make sense. Beneath the thick, unbroken canopy of the Amazon rainforest, something unexpected began to emerge. Not from the ground, but from the data. For centuries, explorers and researchers had wandered this vast green expanse, believing it was an untouched wilderness, too hostile and too remote to support large, complex civilizations. But that idea began to shift in 2018, when a team of archaeologists and remote sensing experts pointed LiDAR scanners over an unassuming stretch of southern Amazonia. What they found changed the conversation entirely. LiDAR, short for light detection, and ranging, is a technology that uses pulses of laser light to measure the distance between the sensor and the ground. From aircraft, it can map terrain with astonishing precision, even beneath dense vegetation. And when researchers reviewed the data collected over a patch of Bolivian forest near the Llanos de Mojos region, they were stunned. Beneath the trees, a network of geometric shapes, some rectangular, others circular, began to take shape. These weren't natural formations. They were clearly human-made. What the LiDAR revealed was a sophisticated system of settlements, roads, canals, and causeways spread across hundreds of square kilometers. At least 26 individual urban sites were identified, including some that spanned more than 100 hectares. The largest sites showed multi-tiered platforms, conical pyramids, and precisely aligned rectangular enclosures, suggesting planned civic or ceremonial architecture. Straight roads extended outward from the centers, in multiple directions, connecting smaller communities and possibly trade or ritual points. In some places, ditches and embankments ran parallel to the roads, creating what looked like avenues or boundary corridors. Many of the structures had been hidden for centuries beneath the forest floor. The trees, vines, and thick underbrush had long concealed any surface evidence. Only with airborne LiDAR could these remnants be separated from the living vegetation. And once revealed, the scale of the discoveries raised serious questions about the history of human habitation in the Amazon. Traditionally, the Amazon has been thought of as a natural barrier to large-scale urban development. The soil is nutrient-poor, seasonal flooding can be unpredictable, and dense vegetation makes agriculture difficult. Earlier generations of archaeologists assumed that any populations in the region had been small, scattered, and largely nomadic. But this new evidence suggested otherwise. The settlements revealed by LiDAR were not the work of small bands of foragers. They were the product of a society capable of city planning, construction, land modification, and coordination across vast areas. Radiocarbon dating of pottery and organic remains associated with the sites places their use between 500 and 1400 CE, centuries before European contact. This timeline aligns with the Kasarabe culture, a little-known pre-Columbian society that had previously been identified through surface finds and limited excavation. Until now, the Kasarabe had been seen as a regional curiosity, but the LiDAR scans reframe them entirely. They were not an isolated group, they were urban builders. One of the most intriguing aspects of the sites is their layout. Unlike the dense, compact cities of ancient Mesopotamia or Egypt, the Amazonian sites appear to have been low-density urbanism. That is, they were cities, but not in the form of tight clusters. Instead, large ceremonial or administrative cores were surrounded by dispersed residential areas, agriculture zones, water management systems, and forested buffer zones. This spatial model may have been an adaptation to the rainforest environment, balancing human development with ecological sustainability. Researchers found wide canals leading to or from some of the settlements, possibly used for transport, irrigation, or flood control. Causeways, often raised above the surrounding landscape, linked different sectors together. Some of the platforms, estimated to be 5 to 10 meters high, may have served as foundations for ceremonial buildings or elite residences. In many of the major sites, artificial mounds were arranged in patterns, grids, concentric circles, or directional lines, suggesting symbolic or astronomical meaning. Pottery fragments, stone tools, and remnants of earthworks indicate that these places were inhabited over long periods of time. Yet today, the forest has reclaimed almost everything. Without LiDAR, much of this world would remain invisible. Even on foot, a person could walk directly over a platform or ancient road and not realize what lay beneath. The question that follows is not just who built these cities, but why they were forgotten. What happened to this society? There is no evidence of violent collapse, no burned structures or fortifications. Instead, it seems the cities were gradually abandoned. Some researchers propose environmental factors, such as changes in climate, river shifts, or soil exhaustion. Others suggest that the arrival of European disease and conquest, even indirectly, led to population loss before many of these areas were ever seen by outsiders. It's also possible that these cities weren't entirely abandoned, but instead reabsorbed into forest villages, their ceremonial significance fading over time. What makes the discovery even more impactful is that it isn't isolated. In the last decade, LiDAR has revealed dozens of other hidden archaeological landscapes throughout the Americas, from Mayan cities in Guatemala to hilltop settlements in Colombia. Together, these finds are rewriting the story of pre-Columbian civilization. The Amazon, once dismissed as an ecological desert for urban life, may have hosted millions of people living in complex, interconnected systems. That realization forces a shift in how we define civilization. For centuries, the metric has often been monumental stone architecture, centralized political systems, and large-scale agriculture. But what if civilization can also mean something different? A society that blends into the forest instead of replacing it. One that builds with earth, wood, and seasonal rhythms rather than marble and granite. One that leaves only subtle traces, but organizes itself on a massive scale. Nonetheless, the discovery of the Amazon's lost city grid is still unfolding. New flights, new scans, and new analysis continue to refine the picture. Many of the sites have yet to be excavated. The forest still guards its secrets tightly, but the evidence is there, etched into the earth, buried beneath roots and visible only from above. No one can say yet exactly how many more cities remain undiscovered beneath the canopy. But with each new scan, the old assumptions grow weaker. The people who lived here were not primitive, isolated or wandering. They were builders, engineers and planners. Their legacy is not gone. It was simply hidden. And now, piece by piece, it's coming into view. The Baltic Sea anomaly. In the summer of 2011, a team of Swedish divers conducting a routine sonar scan across the floor of the Baltic Sea encountered something that would spark years of debate. It was deep beneath the surface, lying at around 90 meters, a formation that didn't resemble the scattered rocks, sand or shipwrecks typically found on the seabed. Instead, what appeared on the scan was something strange, a massive circular structure, perfectly shaped, symmetrical, and with edges too straight to be casually dismissed. From that first glimpse onward, the Baltic Sea anomaly became a puzzle that hasn't been conclusively solved. The object is roughly 70 meters in diameter and disc-shaped, giving rise to comparisons with classic images of flying saucers. It rests on an elevated ridge and seems to stand apart from the surrounding geology. On sonar, its surface appears smooth and uniform. The formation includes not just the main disk, but additional features, such as what appears to be a ramp or stairway-like incline leading up to it. According to the divers, the surface had unusual textures and patterns, with sharp angles and what some described as a runway-like groove stretching out behind it. These details only deepened the mystery. The team that discovered it, called the Ocean X Group, returned with a remotely operated vehicle and conducted dives to the site. Their divers reported something unexpected. When they approached the anomaly, their equipment began malfunctioning. Lights failed, sonar cut out, communication systems showed interference. Yet when they left the immediate area, their devices began working again. The claim was hard to ignore, though it also raised questions. Was the interference natural, a coincidence, or was the formation itself emitting some kind of field? Nafim images and sonar scans were released to the public, prompting widespread interest from geologists, marine researchers, and, as expected, speculators of all kinds. Some proposed that it was a sunken World War II relic. Others suggested volcanic activity, glacial deposits, or even a rock outcrop shaped by ice movement during the last ice age. A few leaned into more unconventional theories, proposing the structure might be a crashed extraterrestrial vehicle or an ancient man-made construction lost beneath the sea. The anomaly's resemblance to science fiction imagery certainly added fuel to the fire, but amid all the theories, concrete answers proved elusive. Scientific analysis of rock samples taken from the site showed that the formation consisted of common basalt and other stones typically found in the region. According to geologists, these could have been shaped over thousands of years by glacial movement, grinding and polishing rock into rounded, sometimes symmetrical patterns. The straight edges and peculiar geometry, they argued, could be a result of natural fracturing and erosion. Still, several aspects remain difficult to explain. The anomaly's isolation from surrounding geological features was one. It didn't seem to match the structure of the nearby seabed, raising the possibility that it had been displaced or was somehow separate in origin. The sonar images, too, displayed a level of detail that didn't neatly align with glacial explanations. And then there was the persistent issue of equipment failures, which were noted by multiple members of the dive team. Skeptics pointed out that the Ocean X team were not academic researchers but treasure hunters, often focused on finding sunken relics for commercial recovery. This raised concerns over the quality and interpretation of the data. However, several marine experts acknowledged that while the anomaly could well be a natural formation, its exact origin and formation process would need further investigation before being conclusively categorized. Since its discovery, efforts to study the anomaly in greater depth have stalled. Poor visibility, challenging underwater conditions, and limited funding have slowed progress. Some proposed sending more advanced imaging equipment to the site, while others argued for leaving it undisturbed until a clearer research initiative could be developed. It's important to note that strange formations on the ocean floor are not entirely rare. The Earth's seabeds contain countless geological surprises, ridges, trenches, and outcrops formed over millions of years. But the Baltic Sea anomaly stands out because of the way it challenges perception. Its shape is too deliberate, its isolation too precise. And the accounts of electrical interference, while anecdotal, lend an added layer of uncertainty that science hasn't yet explained. To this day, no one can say with full confidence what the Baltic Sea anomaly truly is. A glacial formation shaped over millennia, a misinterpreted sonar echo, an ancient structure long forgotten and eroded by time, or something else entirely. Until new data is collected and deeper study is done, the object will remain silent, submerged, and mysterious. Beneath the waves, hidden in cold darkness, it sits unchanged. The sea does not give up its secrets easily, but the question lingers. Are we looking at a quirk of geology, or at a clue to something far older and far stranger than we ever imagined? The giant hands of the Atacama High in the desolate reaches of northern Chile, where the landscape seems frozen in time and the earth itself holds more questions than answers. Something extraordinary has been carved into the desert floor. It's not immediately visible. From ground level, it appears as little more than scattered stones and faint patterns in the dust. But from the sky, the image becomes unmistakable. A massive hand, open, deliberate, human, etched into the earth. Not just one, but several. These are the giant hands of the Atacama, and their existence remains one of the most intriguing archaeological mysteries in South America. The Atacama Desert is one of the driest and most stable environments on the planet. Some regions receive virtually no rainfall in a given year. This unique climate, while harsh for life, has created ideal conditions for preserving ancient markings on the landscape. The geoglyphs here, of which the giant hands are just one category, number in the thousands, created by removing the dark, oxidized layer of surface stones to reveal the lighter earth beneath. These enormous artworks have endured for centuries, some for over a millennium. Among them, the hand glyphs stand out not just for their simplicity but for their scale and symbolism. One of the most prominent examples, known as the Mano del Desierto, or Hand of the Desert, stretches more than 100 meters across. Its fingers are splayed evenly, carved with surprising precision given the tools and methods available at the time. It isn't just a drawing, it's a statement, one made so large that it cannot be fully understood without leaving the ground entirely. These figures were created long before the arrival of Europeans. Most are attributed to pre-Columbian cultures that thrived in the Andes and adjacent desert regions, such as the Tiwanaku, the Atacameño, and other regional groups. Radiocarbon dating and stylistic analysis place the creation of many of the geoglyphs between 500 and 1450 CE, though some may be significantly older. The cultures that produced them left behind pottery, textiles, and burial sites, but no written records. No explanation for the glyphs survives in direct form. What puzzles researchers is not just the existence of the geoglyphs, but the purpose behind them. Theories vary widely. Some believe these figures were religious in nature, giant offerings to gods or spirits believed to dwell in the sky. Others suggest they marked pilgrimage routes, with the glyphs guiding or sanctifying the paths of travelers through the desert. Still others think the designs may have served an astronomical function. Several of the geoglyphs, including the hand formations, appear to align with celestial events, such as solstice sunrises or the rising of particular stars. The idea of sky-aligned symbolism is not unique to the Atacama. Similar alignments have been found in ancient structures around the world, from the Great Pyramids of Egypt to the stone circles of Britain. But in the context of the Atacama, the vast openness of the desert lends these figures an even more haunting quality. They seem made for distant eyes, for beings or forces that could perceive them from a great height or from far beyond the horizon. From a technical perspective, the creation of these glyphs would have required significant planning. Without drones, satellites, or even hills high enough for full overhead views, the ancient builders would have had to envision the full layout from the ground, working line by line, stone by stone. This implies not only a strong cultural motivation, but also a level of engineering and spatial awareness, not always credited to societies without writing systems or large-scale cities. No tools or scaffolding have been found near the hand geoglyphs, though it's possible that wooden platforms or observation mounds once existed and have since eroded or been repurposed. Some researchers suggest that the builders may have used string grids or shadow tracking techniques to maintain proportion and alignment. Whatever the method, the precision remains impressive. What adds to the mystery is the lack of direct context. Unlike other ancient artworks or monuments, these hands are not accompanied by inscriptions, statues, or nearby settlements that offer clues. They stand alone, both literally and culturally. Oral traditions among some indigenous communities reference sky beings, spirits, and ancestral paths, but none offer a definitive explanation for the geoglyphs. The knowledge of their creators has been lost, perhaps intentionally or simply eroded by time. There's also the question of symbolism. Why hands? Human hands are universal symbols of action, power, communication. But when rendered at this scale, they take on a new meaning. A hand large enough to span a football field is not simply an image. It becomes an act of presence, a marker, a message. But to whom? The fact that these glyphs are only fully visible from above has led some to speculate that they were created for divine eyes or for observers who moved through the sky. While that theory remains in the realm of speculation, it raises a valid anthropological point. Many ancient cultures designed their sacred sites and symbols not for human audiences, but for spiritual or celestial ones. The Atacama hands may well fall into this tradition. Today, the geoglyphs are protected, studied, and monitored, but many are still being discovered. Modern satellite imagery continues to reveal new figures hidden in the desert crust. Each one adds another piece to the puzzle, but also deepens the mystery. Without texts, legends, or direct cultural continuity, we are left only with the images and their placement. That and the silent terrain they occupy. The giant hands of the Atacama are reminders that not all messages are written in stone tablets or books. Some are carved into the earth itself, meant to last, meant to be seen, and meant to provoke questions far beyond their original time. And even now, centuries later, those questions remain. Antarctica's subglacial structures, in one of the coldest, most remote places on Earth, hidden beneath layers of ancient ice, something unusual has been detected. Antarctica, vast and forbidding, holds a kind of silence that few places on the planet can match. But under that silence, under nearly 2 miles of compressed snow and ice, scientists using advanced imaging technology have found geometric patterns, linear structures, and strange dome-shaped anomalies that do not appear to be natural formations. The continent has long been associated with isolation and extremity, yet now it may also be a place of forgotten history. The story begins not with excavation, but with satellites. In the early 2000s, satellite imaging and radar mapping began revealing subtle inconsistencies in the ice sheets covering parts of East Antarctica. These were not random features. They were angular, aligned, and spatially consistent across wide areas. Linear ridges stretched in parallel. Rounded formations rose from the ice in near-perfect symmetry. Some satellite images showed grid-like layouts, with right angles and repeating intervals that seemed more architectural than geological. Initially, these patterns were dismissed as natural effects caused by shifting ice, pressure cracks, or rock formations far beneath the surface. But then came the second wave of data, this time from ice-penetrating radar. Unlike traditional ground surveys, radar can cut through thick layers of ice and reflect signals back from whatever lies beneath. These scans confirmed that some of the anomalies were not the result of wind, snowdrift, or glacial activity. They were buried objects, possibly very large ones, resting on the bedrock below the ice sheet. Among the more discussed anomalies was a structure detected in East Antarctica near the Gamburtsev mountain range. The radar imagery revealed angular walls forming what looked like enclosed spaces. In some locations, arch-like curves rose between intersecting lines. At least one region showed a pyramidal formation, with 4 triangular sides and a clear apex, rising from the bedrock like a submerged monument. The so-called Antarctic Pyramid soon became a focus of interest. Measuring nearly 400 feet tall, its symmetry and alignment were difficult to explain as purely natural. While mountains can form pyramidal peaks through erosion, they rarely produce clean geometric faces on multiple sides, all converging at a point. The structure appeared isolated, surrounded by flatter terrain, making its shape even more pronounced. Geologists offered cautious explanations. They suggested that freeze-thaw cycles, high winds, and glacial sculpting might have shaped existing rock into these formations over thousands of years. But others pointed out that such erosion would likely produce irregular surfaces, not the smooth, sloping plains revealed by radar. Supporting the idea of non-natural formation were thermal imaging scans that showed temperature discrepancies around some of these features. In a few cases, the surrounding ice registered higher heat signatures than expected, leading to speculation about geothermal activity or possibly even artificial heat sources beneath the ice. If the anomalies were indeed artificial, their presence raised immediate questions. Who could have built something of that scale in Antarctica, and when? The continent has been covered in thick ice for at least the past 15 million years. Human civilization, in any known form, is only a few thousand years old. Even the oldest, recognized cultures, Sumerians, Egyptians, Harappans, date back no more than 6,000 years. So how could anything man-made predate the ice? Some scientists have explored the possibility that the region wasn't always frozen. Paleoclimatology studies show that parts of Antarctica may have been temperate as recently as 2.5 million years ago during the early Pleistocene. Evidence of ancient forests, fossilized pollen, and even freshwater lakes beneath the ice suggests that Antarctica once had a climate capable of supporting complex life. But even if the continent was once warm, there's no direct archaeological evidence of human habitation there, at least not yet. No tools, no carvings, no inscriptions have been recovered. That absence of artifacts makes it difficult to confirm any theory of ancient civilization beneath the ice. Yet the anomalies persist. Adding to the mystery is Antarctica's legal and political status. Under the Antarctic Treaty System, no country owns the continent. Scientific research is allowed, but strict regulations prohibit excavation or resource extraction. As a result, much of the interior remains unexplored. Access is limited, and logistical challenges, such as harsh weather, isolation, and extreme costs, make long-term studies rare. In 2016, renewed attention was drawn to the radar findings. When independent researchers and satellite analysts shared public imagery showing what appeared to be partially exposed structures emerging from melting glaciers. One formation, partially visible in satellite photos, showed what looked like three equidistant pyramidal peaks in a straight line, bearing a resemblance to the layout of the pyramids at Giza. While this could be a coincidence, the precision prompted renewed speculation. Skeptics argue that pattern recognition is a powerful but often misleading human trait. The brain is wired to find meaning in randomness, and natural formations can mimic design. They also note that radar data is difficult to interpret without extensive on-site validation, which remains scarce in this case. Still, a few recent discoveries lend weight to the possibility that Antarctica holds more than ice. In 2018, scientists drilling through the ice shelf discovered an extensive subglacial lake system, interconnected bodies of liquid water insulated by the ice above. These lakes, isolated for millions of years, could harbor life forms previously unknown to science. The fact that such ecosystems exist under Antarctica raises the possibility that other types of preserved material, biological or cultural, might also survive, frozen in time. There are also precedents in other parts of the world. In Greenland, for example, buried Norse settlements have been discovered beneath layers of soil and ice. In Siberia, mammoth bones and tools have emerged from melting permafrost. The idea that ice can preserve complex history is not a fringe belief. It is a fact. The only question is what Antarctica's ice is hiding. One particularly tantalizing idea is that Antarctica might once have been home to a lost civilization, one that either migrated south from another region or emerged independently during a warmer epoch. If true, it would not only rewrite the history of human migration, but also challenge our understanding of technological development in prehistory. How advanced would a culture need to be to build megalithic structures in such an environment? Could they have mapped the Earth differently, navigated by stars long before known civilizations set sail? And if they existed, where did they go? So far, there are no definitive answers. The structures remain buried, the anomalies unexplained. New satellite imagery is being analyzed every year, and plans have been proposed for deeper drilling and expanded radar mapping. But the pace is slow, and the continent remains stubbornly silent. In the absence of excavation, the theories will continue to multiply, some rooted in science, others in imagination. But beneath it all lies one undeniable truth. Something unusual is buried under Antarctica. Whether it's a trick of geology or a fragment of forgotten history, it remains hidden beneath 2 miles of ice, waiting. The immovable megaliths of Al-Nasla, Saudi Arabia. In the scorching desert of northwestern Saudi Arabia, where wind-blown sand meets sun-scorched stone, stands a boulder unlike any other. At first glance, it appears to be just another natural monument among the vast sandstone formations of the region. But step closer, and something remarkable becomes clear. This is not a single boulder, it's two. A massive stone slab, nearly 7 meters high and several meters wide, split cleanly down the middle into 2 halves, each standing upright, separated by a razor-thin vertical gap. The line between them is so straight, so precise, that it looks as though it was cut by a modern laser. But this stone was not touched by modern machines. It has been like this for centuries, possibly millennia. This is the Al-Nasla Split Rock, located in the Tamar Oasis region of Saudi Arabia. It is one of the most photographed and most debated natural formations in the Arabian Peninsula. Its clean division, unusual symmetry, and mysterious pedestal-like base make it an enduring puzzle. Some see it as a natural oddity. Others argue it is evidence of forgotten technology, an artifact not just of nature, but of intervention. The rock itself is composed of sandstone, a common sedimentary material in desert regions. Sandstone is relatively soft compared to igneous rocks like granite or basalt and is subject to weathering by wind, water, and time. Across the Arabian desert, such formations are not unusual. Pillars, arches, and mushroom-like shapes dot the landscape, carved by erosion over tens of thousands of years. But Al-Nasla is different. The most immediately striking feature is the split. It runs perfectly vertical, dividing the rock into two nearly symmetrical halves. The gap between them is only a few centimeters wide, and yet both sides remain standing, undisturbed. There are no visible signs of crumbling or flaking, no jagged edges, no evidence of hammering or chisel work. The rock was not broken, it was parted. Even more intriguing is the base. Each half of the boulder rests on its own narrow stone pedestal. These pedestals are small compared to the size of the stone above them and appear almost too fragile to bear the weight. The result is a formation that looks precariously balanced, as if one strong gust of wind might topple it, yet it has stood firm for ages. Nearby inscriptions add another layer of context. On the outer surface of one half, ancient petroglyphs depict what appears to be a horse or camel-like creature, stylized in the way common to early Arabian rock art. These markings suggest the site was known, possibly even revered, by people long before the modern era. Archaeologists date some of the petroglyphs in the Tamar region to at least 3,000 years ago, possibly earlier. But the split itself? That's harder to date. There is no organic material to carbon date and no written record describing how or when the divide occurred. Several geological theories have been proposed. One suggests that a fault line runs directly beneath the rock, and that over time, tectonic pressure caused the sandstone to split along a natural weakness in the formation. This theory is plausible, as fault lines can produce clean fractures under the right conditions. However, no visible signs of seismic activity have been documented in the immediate area, and fault-driven fractures usually leave telltale signs, offset layers, angular shifts, or secondary cracks radiating from the main line. None of those features are present at Al-Nasla. Another idea involves freeze-thaw weathering. In cold climates, water can seep into cracks, freeze and expand, eventually causing rock to split. But this region of Saudi Arabia experiences extreme heat, not freezing conditions. Water is scarce, and seasonal temperature changes are unlikely to have produced such a controlled vertical split. Then there's the theory of wind erosion. Over time, wind-blown sand can sculpt rock into intricate shapes, but wind erosion tends to round edges, not sharpen them. It smooths surfaces rather than carving straight lines, and while the rock's outer features do show signs of wind wear, the interior surfaces of the split are crisp and clean, as though they've been protected from the elements since the moment they were exposed. This is where the debate enters speculative territory. Some theorists have proposed that the split was not caused by nature at all, but by ancient technology, possibly forgotten, possibly advanced. The precision of the divide, coupled with the lack of tool marks, has led to speculation that thermal or sonic techniques were used, methods that would not leave chisel marks but would require knowledge far beyond what is traditionally assigned to early desert civilizations. Supporters of this idea point to other megalithic mysteries around the world. At Pumapunku in Bolivia, precisely cut stone blocks fit together with engineering accuracy difficult to replicate even today. At Baalbek in Lebanon, enormous monoliths were quarried and moved, some weighing more than 1,000 tons. Could the people of Tamar have had access to similar techniques? If so, where is the evidence? Why do we see only this one stone standing alone in the desert? There are also alternative cultural explanations. Some suggest that Al-Nasla was deliberately split by people, not for architectural purposes, but symbolic ones. In many ancient cultures, the act of dividing something, be it stone, wood, or animal, had ritual significance. Could this formation have served as a ceremonial site, a marker of territory, a message to travelers? If so, why the precision, and why here? Modern researchers continue to study the region. LiDAR surveys, 3D mapping, and geological sampling have provided more data, but no definitive answers. The Tama Oasis itself is rich in history. It was once an important trade hub, mentioned in Babylonian texts and linked to the famous King Nabonidus. The region's deep wells and caravan routes made it a vital part of the incense trade, drawing cultures from Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the Arabian interior. With such a long history of occupation, it's possible that Al-Nasla held meaning to many different groups over time, each adding to its mystery, none recording its origin. For now, the split rock remains a still point in the shifting sands. It draws geologists, tourists, historians, and theorists alike, each hoping to decipher its story. But the rock offers no clear explanation. It simply stands there, divided but intact, massive yet silent. In a world where answers are often found in archives, artifacts, or layers of soil, Al-Nasla remains an exception. Its explanation may lie in a hidden fracture line, a rare geological process, or perhaps in a lost memory, etched not into stone, but into the forgotten practices of people who knew the land in ways we no longer do. One thing is certain: the boulder is not accidental. Whether it was split by nature with improbable perfection or by the hand of someone who understood stone on a level we no longer comprehend, it challenges the boundary between what is explainable and what is simply there waiting. The underwater road off Yonaguni, Japan, off the southern coast of Japan, near the remote Ryukyu Islands, a series of massive stone structures rests silently beneath the ocean. They are submerged, motionless, and so geometrically precise that their discovery sparked a debate still unresolved decades later. Some call it Japan's Atlantis. Others describe it more cautiously as a rare geological anomaly. But when you look at the formations up close, staircases, platforms, wide terraces, and towering monoliths, it's difficult not to ask the question: was this built by human hands or carved by the sea? This is the Yonaguni Monument, one of the most controversial underwater discoveries of the 20th century. Located near Yonaguni Island, Japan's westernmost point, the formation sits about 25 meters beneath the surface. It was first noticed in 1986 by a local diver, Kihachiro Arataki, while exploring popular dive sites in the area. At first, it appeared to be an unusually shaped rock shelf, but as divers returned, what they saw began to challenge that assumption. The structure is massive, over 150 meters long and nearly 40 meters wide. Its flat surfaces are intersected by sharp right angles. Step-like terraces descend in even layers. What appear to be walls and walkways extend outward in multiple directions. In some areas, upright stones resemble columns. Other sections contain narrow corridors, intersecting platforms, and straight edges that run for meters without deviation. The entire formation looks less like a natural reef and more like a submerged cityscape, abandoned and overtaken by the sea. Japanese marine geologist Professor Masaki Kimura, one of the site's most vocal proponents, has spent years surveying the Yonaguni Monument. Based on his dives and measurements, he has proposed that the structure includes several identifiable architectural elements: a grand staircase, a gate, a large central plaza, and even what may have been a stage or altar area. He suggests that these features could be the remains of an ancient city, perhaps part of the lost culture of Mu, a hypothetical civilization said to have existed in the Pacific long before written history. Kimura believes the site could be over 10,000 years old, dating back to a time before the last ice age ended and sea levels rose dramatically. If true, that would make the Yonaguni Monument one of the oldest known man-made structures on Earth, predating even the pyramids of Egypt or the earliest Mesopotamian temples. But not everyone agrees. Many geologists and archaeologists argue that the formations are entirely natural. They point out that sandstone, the rock that makes up most of the Yonaguni Monument, tends to fracture along horizontal and vertical planes. In areas with frequent seismic activity like Japan, tectonic forces can split rock in ways that create steps, sharp angles, and geometric patterns. These natural processes, they argue, could explain what looks like man-made architecture. Furthermore, critics highlight the absence of artifacts. No tools, ceramics, or signs of habitation have been recovered from the monument itself. Without these, it becomes difficult to prove human involvement. Even Kimura, in later publications, acknowledged that much of the surrounding area lacks cultural debris typically associated with ancient human settlement. However, the debate remains open. Some divers have reported nearby stones carved with what appear to be petroglyphs or symbols, though their authenticity and meaning are still under scrutiny. Others point to similar underwater sites in the region, suggesting that Yonaguni may be part of a much larger submerged landscape, with other platforms, road-like ridges, and stair-shaped structures stretching along the seafloor. Satellite mapping and sonar scans have hinted at other anomalies, but underwater excavation is slow, expensive, and often limited by weather, currents, and visibility. The depth of the site also makes sustained study difficult. Most surveys rely on diver observation, supplemented by 3D scans and photogrammetry, but as of now, no conclusive proof, either geological or archaeological, has settled the question. The age of the structure remains another point of contention. If the Yonaguni Monument was above sea level at any time during human prehistory, it would have to date back at least 8,000 to 10,000 years, when sea levels were significantly lower. During the last glacial maximum, around 20,000 years ago, much of the Earth's water was trapped in ice sheets. As the glaciers melted, coastlines around the world were swallowed by rising seas. Entire regions, now underwater, were once dry land. This includes parts of Southeast Asia, the Persian Gulf, the Bering Land Bridge, and possibly the Yonaguni area. But while it's true that sea levels have changed dramatically, proving that a structure existed and that humans built it requires more than bathymetric data. It requires context, remains of buildings, artifacts, and most importantly, evidence of intentional shaping. Still, the scale of the Yonaguni Monument makes it hard to dismiss. Even if the base formation is natural, some researchers believe it's possible that ancient peoples modified it, reshaping natural outcrops to serve ceremonial or practical purposes. After all, many ancient sites were built atop or around pre-existing geological features. The question is not always whether something is fully man-made, but whether it was intentionally used, adapted, or understood in ways we've yet to uncover. There are also cultural clues that point to deeper stories. The Ryukyu Islands have a long oral tradition of flood myths, vanished lands, and ancient gods. Some local legends speak of cities lost to the sea, swallowed during times of great upheaval. These stories are not unique to Japan. Nearly every ancient culture, from the Greeks to the Sumerians to indigenous Pacific Islanders, has tales of sunken lands, lost civilizations, and catastrophic floods. Could the Yonaguni Monument be a memory of one such event? A remnant, not just of stone, but of story. For now, the monument remains where it was found, quiet, submerged, and difficult to explain. it has become a site of fascination for divers, scientists, and independent researchers from around the world. Expeditions continue, new scans are conducted, but conclusive answers are still out of reach, whether it's a natural formation, a modified landscape, or the eroded ruins of a forgotten civilization. Yonaguni reminds us how much of the past lies hidden, not in deserts, not in jungles, but beneath the sea, and perhaps that's the most compelling part. Beneath 25 meters of clear blue water near one of Japan's least populated islands lies a monument to possibility, carved by tectonics, or by hands long forgotten. It remains, solid, silent, and waiting to be understood. The stone circles of South Africa. Across the rolling hills and open grasslands of southern Africa, thousands of ancient stone circles lie scattered like forgotten footprints in the earth. From the ground, many appear simple, just low rings of rocks, often overgrown with grass or nestled into the contours of the land. But viewed from above, a different picture begins to emerge. These circles are not random. They are patterned, repeating, and sometimes aligned with uncanny precision. Most are built without doors, entrances, or clear function, and some, according to researchers, appear to track the stars. This vast network of stone circles is found primarily in the Mpumalanga and Limpopo provinces of South Africa, with outliers extending into Zimbabwe, Botswana, and Mozambique. Estimates vary, but scholars agree there are tens of thousands of these structures, perhaps even more, that remain undiscovered. They have been known to local communities for generations, sometimes called the ruins or the cattle kraals. But modern archaeology has only recently begun to grasp their true extent. Most of the circles are made from dolerite, a dark, dense volcanic rock found in abundance throughout the region. The stones were placed in rings, ranging in size from just a few meters to over 30 meters in diameter. Some are simple, forming a single enclosed ring. Others are complex, linked by low stone walls to neighboring circles, forming interconnected webs that stretch across kilometers. In a few locations, the networks are so dense that they cover entire hillsides. What's missing is almost as important as what's there. The circles have no doors. Most lack any obvious entrances or breaks in the wall. They also contain no hearths, storage pits, or clear domestic features. Unlike typical settlements, there's little evidence of daily life. No pottery, tools, or refuse commonly associated with human habitation. This has led to ongoing debate about their function. Traditionally, the circles were interpreted as kraals, animal enclosures used by early Bantu-speaking farmers who settled the region between 500 and 1500 CE. In this view, the walls served as protective barriers for livestock, with thatched huts built nearby or just outside the stone rings. While this remains a dominant theory among mainstream archaeologists, some aspects don't quite fit. The sheer number of circles, their uniform shapes, their unusual wall alignments, and the lack of openings raise questions about whether all of them could have been purely utilitarian. Another intriguing feature is their alignment. Some of the stone circles appear to be oriented toward cardinal directions. Others line up with significant astronomical events, including solstice points, lunar standstills, and positions of prominent stars as they rose or set in the prehistoric night sky. These alignments have led some researchers to suggest that the circles may have served calendrical or ritual functions, marking time, tracking seasons, or facilitating celestial ceremonies. In one notable study, a South African researcher analyzed satellite images of multiple circle clusters and identified patterns that mirrored star constellations as they would have appeared thousands of years ago. In this interpretation, the landscape becomes a kind of star map, an ancient observatory etched into the ground using stone, shadow, and memory. More speculative theories suggest the circles could have been part of a larger energy grid, a term often used in fringe research to describe invisible forces or patterns across Earth's surface. Proponents of this idea believe the dolerite stone may have had vibrational or magnetic properties, and that the placement of the circles could amplify natural energy fields. This interpretation, while not widely accepted by mainstream academia, continues to circulate in alternative archaeology circles, especially among those who link the site to lost civilizations. One of the most discussed aspects of the stone circles is a site known informally as Adam's Calendar. Located near the town of Kapsahoop, this particular formation consists of a central ring and two prominent upright stones that may mark the position of the rising sun during solstices. Some have argued that this formation predates Stonehenge by thousands of years and represents one of the oldest known astronomical observatories on Earth. However, these claims remain controversial and are subject to ongoing debate. The dating of the circles is itself a challenge. Unlike sites with preserved organic material, stone constructions are difficult to date directly. Radiocarbon samples from nearby settlements suggest that farming communities inhabited the region from about 500 CE onward. But some researchers argue that the foundations of the circles may be much older, possibly extending back to the late Neolithic or early Iron Age. Recent efforts to better understand the site have employed advanced mapping techniques, including LiDAR scans and aerial surveys. These tools have revealed not only the density of the circles, but also the presence of long, low walls that appear to connect them, sometimes referred to as roads or channels. The function of these connectors is unclear. They may have guided the movement of people or animals, channeled water, or served symbolic or territorial purposes. Cultural memory also plays a role in interpretation. Oral histories from some local communities speak of the ruins as sacred or forbidden spaces, associated with spirits, ancestors, or lost tribes. While these stories are fragmented and often metaphorical, they suggest that the circles were not seen merely as practical structures, but as part of a deeper cultural landscape. In the broader context of African megalithic sites, the stone circles of South Africa remain relatively under-researched. Unlike the well-known Great Zimbabwe ruins to the north, which show clear signs of elite architecture and trade, the stone circles do not appear to have housed kings, palaces, or marketplaces. Their simplicity and repetition suggest they were either highly egalitarian or served a purpose beyond status and economy. One compelling possibility is that the circles were seasonal sites. Communities may have gathered there at specific times of year for rituals, exchanges, or social ceremonies before dispersing again. This could explain the lack of permanent habitation evidence and the strong astronomical associations. Still, the mystery endures. Why build so many circles with such consistency over such a vast area? Who organized their layout, and how was knowledge passed across generations to maintain the patterns? Why do the walls stand with no clear entrances, and what role did the sky play in shaping the ground? Today, the stone circles are protected as part of South Africa's cultural heritage, but they remain largely unexcavated. As interest in ancient astronomy and forgotten technologies grows, more eyes are turning toward these modest yet enigmatic formations, seeking meaning in their silence. In the end, the circles may offer something more profound than certainty. They stand as echoes of thought made visible in stone, a message without words, a pattern without translation. Whether practical, ceremonial, or cosmological, their presence reminds us that even in the humblest of ruins, there can be deep intention, and perhaps that is the real discovery. The Abydos carvings, Egypt. In a quiet chamber of one of ancient Egypt's most sacred temples, high above the ground and partially obscured by the passage of time, a series of carvings has stirred a debate unlike any other. On the stone architrave, in the temple of Seti I at Abydos, a cluster of hieroglyphs appears to depict something extraordinary, something unmistakably modern. One shape seems to show a helicopter, complete with rotor blades. Another resembles a tank or submarine. Yet, another echoes the outline of a spacecraft or jet. These are not vague suggestions. The resemblance is so precise that it has led many to ask, how could such imagery exist over 3,000 years ago? The carvings are located in one of the rear chambers of the temple complex at Abydos, a site that has long been associated with deep religious significance. Abydos was considered one of the oldest and most important pilgrimage sites in ancient Egypt. It was the cult center of Osiris, god of the afterlife, and the burial ground of the earliest pharaohs. The temple of Seti I, father of Rameses the Great, was built during the 19th dynasty, around 1290 BCE, and is regarded as one of the finest architectural and artistic achievements of the New Kingdom. Among the many inscriptions and reliefs that adorn the temple's walls and ceilings, this particular set, often referred to as the Abydos helicopter hieroglyphs, is found on a horizontal support beam near the ceiling. The images came to widespread public attention in the 1990s when photographs began circulating in books, magazines, and eventually online forums. To many observers, the shapes were immediately recognizable as technological forms that should not exist in the visual vocabulary of an ancient civilization. The controversy arises not only because of what the carvings seem to show, but also because of the location. These are not modern graffiti or later additions. They are part of the original architecture of the temple, placed high above the ground in a ceremonial space, carved into stone using the same techniques and tools as the surrounding hieroglyphs. The details are not haphazard. They appear deliberate, layered, and intentional. But how does a helicopter end up on a temple wall in 13th century BCE Egypt? Mainstream Egyptologists offer a compelling explanation. The phenomenon, they argue, is the result of a process called palimpsest, where a surface is reused or recarved, and the combination of both inscriptions creates unintended imagery. In this case, the overlapping of two sets of hieroglyphs, one from Seti I's original construction and another from a later restoration during the reign of his son Rameses II, created a visual effect that looks modern to the modern eye. The original inscription is believed to have included a royal name or title. When the stone was later recarved, the new set of symbols was meant to overwrite the original message, as was common practice in dynastic Egypt, especially during royal succession or political shifts. Over time, the plaster used to smooth the surface between the carvings eroded, leaving both layers visible. The result is a superimposed image, unintentional but compelling. When viewed without context, it can appear to depict helicopters, submarines, or even futuristic craft. This explanation is supported by other examples of palimpsests found throughout ancient Egypt. Walls and columns in temples were frequently modified, reused, or updated. Inscriptions were added, erased, and replaced, often without fully removing the earlier text. Over centuries, erosion and damage further blurred the original content, creating composite images that were never meant to be interpreted together. But not everyone accepts this conclusion. Alternative researchers argue that the palimpsest explanation doesn't fully account for the clarity and shape of the images. They point out that the helicopter glyph, in particular, bears a striking resemblance to modern aircraft, complete with tail boom, rotor blades, and cockpit structure. They also question why, among all the many palimpsests and recarvings found in Egypt, so few result in images that mimic such complex modern forms. Some fringe theories suggest that the carvings are not the result of chance, but of memory, records passed down from a forgotten technological age. In this view, the ancient Egyptians inherited knowledge or imagery from a lost civilization, possibly even an advanced culture that predated the known dynastic period. These theories often reference the idea of Atlantis, or propose cycles of human civilization that rise and fall, leaving only fragments behind. The Abydos carvings, they argue, could be a visual echo of something real but now lost. Others take the theory further, suggesting extraterrestrial influence, asserting that what is depicted on the temple wall are machines witnessed by the Egyptians themselves, misunderstood in their time and preserved through symbolic representation. This idea, while not supported by mainstream scholarship, remains popular in pseudo-archaeological literature and continues to generate interest from those who seek alternative narratives to human history. Yet, despite the controversy, what often goes overlooked is the historical context of the temple itself. The Temple of Seti I is filled with rich, complex symbology. The walls depict detailed scenes of ritual, cosmology, and kingship. It is also home to the famous Abydos King List, an uninterrupted chronological record of 76 kings from Egypt's past. This document was carefully carved into the wall as a gesture of legitimacy and historical continuity. Every inscription in the temple was part of a larger spiritual and political design. So what does it mean that one set of symbols, likely accidental in nature, has become the most discussed, photographed, and speculated carving in the entire complex? It may tell us more about ourselves than about ancient Egypt. We are drawn to patterns. We seek meaning in symbols. And when we encounter something that doesn't immediately fit the established framework, we ask questions, sometimes challenging ones. The Abydos carvings raise those questions, not because they rewrite history, but because they sit at the edge of what we understand. They remind us that even in the most well-studied civilizations, mysteries remain. To date, there has been no official excavation or reanalysis of the beam in question. Access to the temple is restricted, and the carvings are high above the ground, making close inspection difficult without scaffolding or specialized imaging. As a result, the debate continues largely in photographic form, analyzed through digital enhancement, historical comparison, and theoretical modeling. Mainstream consensus still holds that the carvings are a product of natural erosion and human recarving, fascinating, but not evidence of ancient helicopters or lost machines. And yet, the visual resemblance continues to challenge that conclusion in the minds of many. In the end, the Abydos carvings are a reminder of something deeper, that history, even when carved in stone, is not immune to reinterpretation. Our view of the past is shaped not only by what we find, but by how we choose to see it. Whether accidental palimpsest, symbolic vision, or something else entirely, these carvings have captured the human imagination in a way few artifacts do. They remain quiet, weathered, and ambiguous. A few lines in stone, a question without a definitive answer. Which of these ancient mysteries captured your imagination the most? Was it the underwater terraces of Yonaguni, or the laser-split stone of Al-Nasla? Maybe it was the hieroglyphs at Abydos that seemed to echo modern machines. Whatever sparked your curiosity, let us know your thoughts in the comments. Have a theory, a question, or a discovery we missed? We'd love to hear it, and if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe. There's much more ahead. Forgotten civilizations, unexplained artifacts, and history's most puzzling secrets are waiting to be explored. This journey into the unknown is just beginning.